Hey guys, and welcome back for another video. It's been a really long time since I've done a full gallery tour. I was looking around the other day, and even though the aquariums are not quite perfect or specifically prepped for this tour, I thought most of them were looking good enough to at least feature. A lot has changed since the last tour in winter, so I'm excited to take you guys around and show you some of the improvements and just all the aquariums. If you're not already, you should definitely subscribe to my channel, so that way you can be notified for future videos. We'll start here with the largest aquarium currently in my gallery. This is my ADA 120p aquarium, which is 120 centimeters by 50 centimeters and 50 centimeters. It's about 300 liters or 80 US gallons. I've had this aquarium for over 5 years now, but this layout has been just about over 8 months old now. You can see that it's quite grown in and mature. This hardscape is not too impressive in my opinion. I'm not really thrilled with how I built the Sansu stone layout, but I like the wild look in the way that all the plants are fully grown in, making such a beautiful and natural layout. Since I haven't featured this layout in a while, you might notice some of the changes I've made. First of all, the fish selection has changed. Originally I kept Harlequin rasboras in this aquarium. Although I really like the fish, I decided not to keep them in the future since they really seem to jump out of the rimless aquariums too much. So I decided to switch to cardinal tetras, which I think has been such a nice change for this layout. Just for fun and to experiment, I added a bit of Sagittarius subulata in the midground. I thought having a thicker textured plant mixed with the thinner Helanthrium tenuum could make an interesting appearance. This aquarium is not without its issues. I often get this green algae on the stones, glass, and even the plants. This is really not normal for such a mature layout, and I don't have this issue with any of my other aquariums. For a while, I was thinking that it might be because of reusing old soil from an aquarium that did have previous algae issues in it. But after discussing it with others and reflecting, I'm more inclined to think that the problem is with the filtration. This aquarium is running an Awase Biomaster 600 and a small Eheim Classic 2213. You can see from the surface agitation that it's really not much flow. Perhaps next time when I rescape the layout, I'll have to consider switching the filtration, maybe to a Superjet 1200 or something like that. In the meantime, I'll just have to put an extra effort into keeping the filters really clean. Despite all of these problems, it's still one of my favorite aquariums to enjoy viewing in the gallery. It just has a larger presence to it. Next, we have my first ADA 60p aquarium, which I featured and rescaped very recently. This is the second version of this Pahai stone iwagumi. It's very minimalist, Sanzan iwagumi, featuring just the 3 stones and 1 plant, Glossostigma elanthinoides. This new layout is only a few weeks old, but you can still see that there's diatom algae covering some of the leaves of the Glossostigma. When I rebuilt the layout, I kept the filter and its media, but since I completely changed the substrate, it caused the aquarium to cycle and have all these initial diatoms again. Despite this, the layout has done fairly well, and I've been noticing the plants growing really quickly. The back right corner is a bit thinner since I actually ran out of plants when I was setting it up, but I know that it'll all fill in within just a few more weeks. Once I start seeing the diatoms, it's my indication that I can start adding shrimp. I don't currently have other algae eaters available, so I have to rely on the shrimp and my maintenance skills only. I'm currently doing 50% water changes on this aquarium every other day. I'm still adding sea chem stability to help add more beneficial bacteria and get this aquarium mature and stable as soon as possible. I think it'll be another month or two before this layout starts to reach its potential. Once I see things stabilize more, I'll add my black neon tetras back into the aquarium. They're currently just being held in a temporary holding tank. Next, we move on to my second 60p aquarium. This one is a full ADA setup, approximately 6 months old now. It has an Superjet ES300, Aquasky RGB2, and it is on top of the ADA clear cabinet. I have mixed feelings about how this aquarium is developing. I've had a lot of difficulty with the planting specifically. If you've seen some of my previous videos on this layout, you'd know that the planting has been changed up a few times, and it's definitely not how I originally envisioned it. The Crypt Balance was not really growing well, so I actually planted some Limnophila aromatica directly on top of it. It was added somewhat recently, but it's definitely not growing as beautifully as I've seen it in pictures, so I'm hoping it just needs more time to develop its colors properly. On the other hand, the Rotala Valachi is growing really well, and I'm also seeing the smaller Limnophila species Vietnam start to come out from the hairgrass. I also planted the Tiger Lotus at the very beginning, but it kind of just got buried entirely under the rest of the plants. The layout has a few small patches of BBA, but as you can tell by the white coloring, it's pretty much dying off. I was spot dosing it with Seachem XL, but I'll also use the ADA Pro Picker to pull off the rest of it. The ADA Rio stone has really been affecting the KH in this aquarium. So I deal with this hard water stain on the glass all the time. The aquarium only gets remineralized with GH+, but after a few days it's really an eyesore. Nowadays I add a bit of white vinegar and wipe the glass down using a paper towel. It makes the glass look good as new, at least for a short while. Like the others in the gallery, I'm hoping to keep this layout somewhat long term, hopefully at least another 6 to 12 months more. Next to that 60p aquarium, we have my first 90p aquarium. This one is about 8 months old now. With this layout, I challenged myself to see how tidy I can keep the different species of plants. There's only 3 in this layout: the Hemianthus coetricoides cuba, Helanthium tenellum broadleaf, and Eleocharis acicularis. The concept of tidiness is to directly contrast the more wild, natural look that I'm trying to achieve in the 120p aquarium. There have been several changes to this aquarium. Since I've been setting up my newer 90p, which I'll show you soon, I changed the lighting in this aquarium back to the original solar RGB. I was worried that the change in lighting could have a negative effect on the aquarium temporarily, but it was fine. On the other hand, I had issues with my old inline CO2 diffuser. It was this old off-brand product that didn't have a name, but basically it wasn't letting any CO2 through, and it was causing the pressure to build up until, water ended up on my floor of the cabinet. After experimenting several things, it was just clear that the inline CO2 diffuser had to go, and I replaced it with this ADA Pollen Glass Large. I was worried the change in CO2 distribution could cause some algae problems, but the only problems I experienced were beforehand when the inline CO2 kept blowing out, causing the CO2 to be too low. The main difficulty in maintaining this aquarium is keeping the HC Cuba carpet really clean. Eleocharis runs everywhere, so you see these little strands of hair grass grow from underneath. Every week I have to spend some time manually removing these. This aquarium has really had a bad snail infestation problem. Unfortunately, I didn't catch it early enough and let them breed way too much. So it's kind of a daily chore for me to try and crush as many as I can. Luckily, the fish really enjoy eating them. But if the problem persists, I'll probably end up adding some assassin snails. Besides these updates, the only other thing that's different is that I added more rummy nose tetras, since I didn't have many remaining after keeping them for so long. When I trim the carpet in this tank, I would run an Eheim 350 skimmer overnight to collect the leaves, but one morning I found 2 fish who actually died in the skimmer. I suspect it's because I had the flow up too high on the skimmer, but I don't think I'll be running that skimmer anymore, and we'll just net out the plant trimmings manually from now on. It's hard to decide which aquarium is my favorite in the gallery, but right now I think it's probably either this one or the 120p. Let me know your favorite down in the comments below. Here's my new ADA 90p aquarium, which you've seen me feature a lot lately. This 90p has the newer ADA Solar RGB2, the light screen 90, and it sits on the garden stand. I'm currently waiting for the plants I ordered to arrive, so hopefully I can fully set this up very soon. In the meantime, the hardscape sits here with the Frodo stones placed on top of the wood to prevent it from floating for after when I fill up the aquarium. What kind of plants do you think would look nice in this layout? Here's my smallest aquarium in the gallery. This is the ADA Mini M, which is only 5.5 gallons or 20 liters. It's about 3.5 months old now, but it looks a little underdeveloped after having to make several changes to it. The foreground has been changed to Eleocharis parvula from Glossostigma originally. If you saw my last video, I mentioned having a lot of diatom algae issues at first. Thankfully, as you can see, there's no algae remaining. The Glosso wasn't doing too well, but I also wanted to mix the Eleocharis with that Hygrophila araguaia in the foreground, which kind of creates a more natural space, I think. This is why I haven't trimmed the Eleocharis, and I'm just letting it grow a bit taller. The stem plants are still rather leggy and not bushy yet, but that's because I had to completely remove them and grow them from scratch again. I'm happy with their improvements and knowing that the color and the bushiness will get a lot better with time. I added a few Takano tetras in this layout. It was difficult thinking of a fish that would remain small enough to safely inhabit this aquarium, but I love the colors of these fish and they're doing quite well here. For reference, you can see that several of the female blue cherry shrimp are actually larger than the fish. This aquarium runs the ADA CO2 Advanced System Forest. This is my first time using an ADA CO2 system, and admittedly it's one of the few ADA products that I'm not a huge fan of. It's perfect for beginners who are intimidated by using CO2, or maybe they just have one small aquarium like this. But the reality is that this bottle empties about once per month for this 5-gallon aquarium, and each replacement bottle costs about $20. It just economically makes much more sense to purchase a standard 5-pound CO2 tank and use a more standard CO2 system, even for a smaller aquarium like this. The product itself is great otherwise. I have to use the ball valve to manually shut on and off the CO2. It's a bit of a pain to remember, and I often find myself leaving it on for too long by accident. You can also get the ADA EL valve, which is basically a solenoid, but I wasn't able to fit it to this setup unless I put the CO2 system under the cabinet, which kind of would have defeated the purpose of displaying it in the first place. The DOOA Sol stand looks really dim here compared to the Solar RGB 2, but I have to say it still grows the plants pretty well. On the other wall, we have my experimental setup, the DOOA Neo Glass Air. This is the 20 by 20 by 8 centimeter shallow aquarium. It has a rock layout with ADA Yamaya stone, and it has this moss that I collected from my backyard. As you can see, the moss is growing decently well. I spray it down twice per day and fill the water up once per day. That's pretty much it for the maintenance of this one. I keep the humidity around 50% in the room. It can't be kept any higher since it's in a basement and I don't want any mold issues. When I traveled once, my wife missed some of the moss when misting, so unfortunately some of it died off, but I realized for the future that if I'm ever traveling, I can just cover it with some saran wrap and keep the humidity high. I've also learned that you can easily trim the moss when it starts to get too tall, and you can just relocate it and propagate. When I have visitors to the gallery, everyone always walks by or just ignores this setup, but I think it's really nice and I enjoy keeping it. Finally, I have to save the Discus aquarium for last. I don't consider this one to be part of the gallery exactly, since it's not a planted or a display aquarium. It's more of a separate hobby for me, kind of a break from all the art and design related work that I have to do for the planted aquariums. For its size, it's definitely the easiest aquarium to care for. I just do small water changes, maybe like 20 to 30% a few times a week, and I try to keep the bare bottom substrate free from detritus. I have this huge canister filter, but even after several months, it was mostly still clean, so it's very easy to maintain this tank. I'll just be doing water changes here while I'm trimming or cleaning the other aquariums. I almost never keep the light on in this aquarium, so the discus are a little bit spooked here, but you can see that they're doing pretty well now. I did lose 3 of them initially after all of my initial challenges, but since then I've had the same group of 9 and they've all been doing really well. It's fun watching them grow and starting to develop their colors and patterns a bit more clearly. I feed them about 2 to 3 times daily. Usually it's a mix of freeze-dried black worms, this staple discus granule, and sometimes I give them treats. So that's a look at the full gallery. On a normal week, I spend about 10 to 15 hours per week maintaining all these aquariums, maybe about 3 to 5 days a week. Usually I come down here after work at night and always find it very relaxing. If you're ever interested in visiting, you're more than welcome to contact me. I'm located just outside of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, and I'm happy to schedule tours by appointment. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.